She had built an empire from nothing, towering glass offices, national awards, interviews on morning shows, and a reputation for being unstoppable. But on the night her world collapsed, Claire Hensley stood alone in her corner office, staring at the city she once believed she owned. The board had voted her out. Her company was gone. Her marriage had fallen apart. Her own daughter wouldn't return her calls. And as she sank onto the cold, polished floor, mascara smudging down her cheeks, she whispered a question she had never let herself ask before. What did I do wrong? Most people expected Claire to have a team of advisors or friends to comfort her. But the person who changed her life that night wasn't a business partner or a family member. It was the night shift janitor, a quiet single dad she barely knew, who carried a truth that would shatter everything Claire thought she understood about success and kindness. Before we begin, if you enjoy heartfelt stories about real human moments, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment to support our community here at TruthLines USA. Your engagement helps us keep creating stories that inspire and connect us all. Claire's story didn't begin with wealth. She grew up in a small Indiana town, raised by a mother who worked 2 jobs at a diner and a grocery store. Claire promised herself she'd never live like that. She studied aggressively, worked harder than anyone else, and climbed the corporate ladder with a fire that sometimes burned the people around her. WY42. She was the CEO of a booming tech company valued at nearly $1 billion. People admired her drive. Employees feared her temper. Friends, well, she didn't have many left, but she never slowed down long enough to notice what she was losing. Then came the night that tore everything away: a data breach, a lawsuit, an investor panic. Whatever the rumor mills later spun, the truth was simpler. Claire had ignored warnings from her staff, pushing them too hard and too fast. When the board needed someone to blame, they chose her. Her husband had grown tired of playing second to her career. Her daughter felt invisible. And Claire was left with silence where her life used to be. It was almost midnight when she finally stood up from the floor of her office. Her shoes were tossed aside. Her eyes felt raw. She walked barefoot toward the elevator, carrying only a box of personal items the board had allowed her to take. The hallways felt too bright, too empty. And that's when she noticed someone mopping the marble floors. "Evening, Ms. Hensley," the janitor said softly, stepping aside. She had seen him before, maybe a dozen times over the years, but she had never once bothered to learn his name. Tonight, though, something in his voice felt grounding, like a hand reaching out across a storm. She stopped. "Hi," she said, swallowing hard. I'm having a rough night." He looked up, and she realized he wasn't much older than her. His eyes were tired, but warm. "I figured," he said gently. "The whole building heard about it." Claire winced. "Great." Even the janitors know. He didn't take offense. In fact, he smiled in a way that wasn't mocking or pitying, just real. "Name's Mark," he said. "I work nights, so I can take care of my daughter during the day. She's 9, smart as a whip, loves science, thinks cleaning a skyscraper is the coolest job in the world because she says Dad touches the clouds." Something in Claire's chest cracked. That's actually beautiful," she whispered. Mark leaned on the mop handle and studied her face. "You look like you've had enough weight on your shoulders to crush a whole mountain. You want to sit for a minute?" She didn't know why she accepted. CEOs didn't sit on hallway benches with janitors. But tonight, she wasn't a CEO. She was a woman who felt like her whole world had fallen apart. They walked to a small break area near the storage closet. Claire sat on a plastic chair that creaked beneath her. Mark poured her a cup of vending machine coffee and handed it over without saying a word. "Thank you," she murmured. For a while, they sat in silence. Then Mark said quietly, "You know, losing something big, it can feel like the universe is punishing you. But sometimes, it's redirecting you." Claire scoffed lightly. "Toward what?" "Ruin." He shook his head. "Toward truth." She frowned. "What truth?" Mark hesitated. His expression softened, but there was something heavy in his eyes, something he'd carried for a long time. "You once changed my life," he said, "and you never knew it." Claire looked at him, confused. "Me? I don't think we've ever really spoken before tonight." He nodded. "You didn't speak to me, but something you did, it mattered." He took a breath. 6 years ago, I was at my lowest. My wife had just left. I was working 3 jobs, barely sleeping, trying to keep my little girl fed. I just got in this job here. My first week, I was cleaning the stairwell when I overheard you yelling at someone on the phone. You were furious about a deal falling through. You said something like, failure is not the end unless you give up. Claire blinked. I said that. Yeah, he laughed softly. You were on fire. Honestly, I was scared you were going to bust the door open. She almost smiled, but that sentence, it hit me hard. I've been thinking about giving up everything, my job, fighting for custody, my life, all of it. But hearing someone as powerful as you say that failure wasn't the end, it snapped something awake in me. Claire stared at him. She didn't know whether to cry or apologize or both. That night, Mark continued. I promised myself I'd fight for my daughter. I'd be the man she needed. And I did. So when you think you haven't done anything good, you're wrong. For a moment, Claire couldn't breathe. This man, this gentle, quiet janitor, was telling her that a single frustrated sentence she didn't even remember had saved him. Her kindness hadn't saved him. Her compassion hadn't saved him. Just her voice, echoing through a stairwell. Mark, she whispered. I didn't know. I know, he said softly, but that's the thing about kindness. Sometimes you don't know when you've given it. Claire wiped her eyes. I've spent my whole life trying to be strong. I never realized how much I hurt people along the way. Mark nodded thoughtfully. Strength without kindness is just pressure, and pressure breaks things. She let those words sink in. After a while, Mark stood. Come with me. I want to show you something. She followed him to the farthest end of the hallway, past the elevators, past the conference rooms, to an emergency staircase she rarely used. He opened the door and guided her to a landing overlooking the city through a tall, narrow window. My daughter calls this the Hope Window, Mark said. Whenever she visits me before my shift, we stand here. She says the city looks like it's full of fireflies. Makes her feel like anything is possible. Claire looked out. She had stood at the top of the tallest office in the building earlier, staring out with despair. But from this lower, humbler view, the city looked different. Not conquered, not owned, but alive. I used to think success meant being above the world, Claire whispered. But maybe it's about being part of it instead. Mark smiled. That sounds like kindness to me. Claire turned to him. Thank you. Really, I don't know what comes next for me, but I don't feel completely alone anymore. You're not, he said simply. Over the next few weeks, something changed in Claire. She began volunteering at a community center. She reached out to co-workers she'd once brushed off. She apologized to her daughter, and slowly, carefully, they rebuilt their relationship. She even asked Mark if she could meet his daughter, and the 3 of them shared lunch in the park one sunny afternoon. Claire still didn't have a company. She didn't have her old success, but she had something she'd been missing for a long time. Kindness, connection, humanity, and a strange sense of peace she'd never known at the top. Months later, Claire started a nonprofit that offered career training to single parents, inspired by Mark's story. She asked him to be her first board member. He cried when she told him. She cried when he accepted. People said Claire was different now. Softer, warmer. But she wasn't weaker. She was stronger than she'd ever been, because she'd finally learned that strength rooted in kindness doesn't break, it rebuilds. And whenever things got tough, she'd remember what the janitor had shown her from that stairwell window. The fireflies of the city, flickering with possibility. Kindness doesn't require power. It doesn't need wealth or a title. It only needs a moment, point one word, point one act, point one chance to change a life without even knowing wherever you are, whatever you're facing today, remember Claire and remember Mark. Remember that the smallest spark of kindness can rewrite someone's entire story, even yours, and maybe, just maybe, it can shatter your world in the best possible way. End of script. If you'd like, I can refine tone, adjust length, or write a voiceover version with pacing cues.